Hello there. Hi, and welcome back. So, as promised, here I am. This is the first video in the web series, if we can call it that way, the Bobs That Changed My Life. And today I wanted to talk with you guys and try to figure it out why it was so important to me, why it resonated so much with me. The movie we're analyzing today is Resident Evil 2 Apocalypse. It is the second in the franchise that has six movies, and this year came out the ninth like main series game, which is crazy, but it's like a franchise that is going since the late 90s. So it's very long. So I already recorded a video before and I tried to follow like the same blueprint that I did with Stepmom, but it didn't work out because I feel like this movie specifically, it's not emotionally as complex, as an action movie. It's a more like explosions and bad girls and yeah. So I recorded in the same way and it got like almost an hour because there's so much plot I need to explain to make minimum sense. But in the end, when I got to the end of the video, I realized like, okay, so this didn't make like sense at all. It has like a lot of story, but it does not have like a lot of conflicts of substance, And I even struggle a little bit to really be able to speak and get why this movie was so important. Thinking as a queer kid, I like to stop myself and just make like a bunch of researches because the characters in this movie, they are not very deep. So I think I want to follow like a different approach, which is I will describe like the main event and we will discuss like the differences between the characters in the movie and maybe like a little bit of the games because I am fascinated with this universe, so I've played the games a couple of times. Also, I put in the title that Jill Valentine made me gayer, but to talk about this movie, I really need to talk about Alice, which is the main protagonist of the movie, which is played by Mila Jovovich. And she does not exist in the games. If someone's watching and don't know about the games, she does not exist in the video games world, and she was a character that was specifically developed for the movies, which I think was like the right thing to do because the characters, when they adapt the characters of the video games, it gets like really bad. First, because the writing is not good. I think developing like a whole new character gave them freedom to do like all the bad shit crazy things that happens in this series. And I truly think like it's six movies, but there are two trilogies basically. Like I think the first, second, and third, they are more grounded. Take that as you will, because it's still like a series about zombies. But the fourth, fifth, sixth, they're not that good. It's more of like I'm just seeing like beautiful gowns and a lot of action scenes that you may think it's cool. So there's that. Let's like move a little bit forward. So for this movie, I went to an article that I read in the HuffPuff's website, which I think is like a hookup app, but it's a great article. So the writer is Trevin Martin. The writer talks with two different professors on the topic, why do gay men historically adopt female stars as their icons? And I want to focus specifically on the second teacher that he talks with, which is David G. Leonard, which is an associate professor in the Department of Critical Culture, Gender, and Race Studies at the Washington State University. So the writer, Trevor, asked him why he thought gay men adopt females as icons. And I got like a little quote. I'm gonna leave the article on the description box. But the quote that I got was, these women challenge and refuse to fit in this sort of commodity culture. They enter into a media culture through their own script. their own definition of self. I think these qualities are celebrated and admired, especially within communities that are also depicted and treated as outsiders, as undesirable and not normative. In the article, he discusses like Joan Crawford and Liza Minnelli, so like more real people as well, like real actresses. But I think this fits a little bit into the movie and as this almost like a queer analysis that we've been doing for the past movies because the characters they are mistreated as well, like very meta, I know, but they are mistreated as characters because the writers probably did not know what to do. I'm giving like too much credit to the writer because this is not at all the focus of the movie, but I think the characters are mistreated because they had to fit into this badass girl category, which implies that the character does not like have any emotion or any emotional arc at all. They can never like show any sort of like fear or things that are not like pain because the only thing that this movie communicates is like, oh, they are badasses. And the character of Jill, I remember like playing the games as a kid because my father was really fond of those games. And I remember playing as her, and in the games, she's very like different from the character in the movies. She's in three, like two-ish, three-ish movies. But in the games, she's like a very proficient and she's like very sure of herself. She finds herself in a situation where she has to deal with this like bunch of zombies and secret companies and secret labs and mutated creatures. And she is like this cop, which she's part of the STARS team, which is Special Tactics and Rescue Service. So she's like a cop, but in the first game and in the third game, like the zombies are basically trying to kill her. Jill in the games is a specialist in lockpicking, bomb disposal, and heavy weapons. So she's the deal. In the movie, since they have to make everything about Alice, Jill characters becomes very mistreated in the sense of she becomes basically like useless so Alice can fix the situation. So the movie follows. We start in like the middle of an outbreak, and Raccoon City, which is the main city of the first movies and the games, is being shut down, so the virus cannot like escape the city. And an incident originating at the Hive is the beginning of like the infection. So to give like a little bit of a story, Alice in the first movie, she's a security for Umbrella and she works in the Hive, but she gets amnesia. So in the second movie, when we get to her, she is being experimented by Umbrella. She's one of the survivors of the Hive that occurs in the first movie. As the city is placed under containment, Jill Valentine, here we have the introduction. In the movies, she's a disgraced police officer who had previously tried to warn people about the threat. We can see this from in her apartment. It has like a lot of like news cut out, and it's established that she's been trying to expose Umbrella. She's fighting like wave of zombies at the police department in the beginning. And here we have to talk about clothing. So Jill's clothes in like the whole movie is a blue tank top and a mini skirt, which is like very fierce and very cunty. But in the games, this is the outfit that she wears the third game, but in the game it's established that she's wearing that because she comes home and the place she's in kind of explodes. So, and in the movie, like she begins the movie walking in high heels, and then she watches the news that says there's been an outbreak in the police department, and she just like chooses to stay in the same clothes, put some boots on, and just goes. So if you're going like to save the world and kill zombies, maybe you want to wear like a tank top and a mini skirt. At the same time, we have scenes of Alice waking up in a futuristic hospital lab, and she discovered that she has been injected and she's been like subjected to experiments that have begun mutating her body. And she like basically gets super strength in this movie specifically. So we're gonna do like a little timeline, but the first movie she's like normal. In the second she has super strength, and in the end of this one she gets psychic powers. So in the third one she's psychic and cloned. So we have like a bunch of things that happens. We meet Peyton, we meet Terry, which is a journalist, and then they get into a church to seek shelter. When they get into the church, Jill discovers that a priest is feeding his undead sister with human remains. And this is one of like the more scary scenes of the movie because this movie like very action focused. It's not like trying to be like scary at all, but in this beginning they construct like a really beautiful atmosphere. So it's still like a lot of shadows in this scene and it's like kind of slowish. And when you get to like combat, it's like really quick cuts. It's still like in the church we have creatures that are called lickers. So the lickers, they are like the main villain of the first movie. And in the games, they work as like mini bosses because there's like a lot of zombies, but the zombies they are like slow. And so you kind of like have to you don't have like to kill all of them. You can like kind of like walk past them and they take like let's say 5 to 6 bullets to kill. Meanwhile, like a licker, you would take like 10 to 15 and they are quicker to attack. Jill's is trying like to fix and kill the lickers. She just has never dealt with them in this movie because she doesn't know what they are. So they make like Alice character's entrance into the movie, like bursting through a window in her motorcycle. She kills like both lickers. She kills one by using the explosion of the gas tank of the motorcycle, and she uses like the cross to kill the second one. And this is like the first scene where every time Alice is on screen and with Jill, Jill's character just gets like really dumbified. So she just becomes like a total inept and Alice saves the day. This is like the beginning of this character being mistreated on this movie. After they fix that, they go into a graveyard and Alice kind of explains to Jill her past with Umbrella. This is like a very wasted opportunity because both characters they are involved with Umbrella. So Alice used to work as a guard for Umbrella. And like yeah, she survived the Hive incident and she's being treated as like a experiment right now. And Jill, if we take like the chronology of the games, she also dealt with Umbrella. So the characters could have just talked and being like, "Oh, Umbrella kind of screwed my life," and the other one could be like, "Oh yeah, they screw my life too." You know, I don't think like in the pursuit of maybe trying to make these characters like really badass females, they are just like, you work for Umbrella. This is like Mila Jovovich's voice throughout the movie. She's always like talking like this, you know, like very low. And just like, you work for Umbrella? And she's like, I used to work for the Umbrella Corporation. My name's Alice, and I used to work for the Umbrella Corporation. But yeah, so they kind of like kill a lot of zombies. And here I think it's like the appropriate time to talk about the sound design of this movie. They use a lot of like whip sounds to, I don't know, like when people are kicking, when people are jumping, when people are like drawing guns. It's just like a lot of whip sounds, which I think is like really cool. I think it's like a very interesting choice. I know some people think it's bad. And they also use like a lot of like quick cuts to make the zombies like faster. And they also use like a technique that uses like very slow shutter speed. Just think of like Wonka Wai movies, so they use that as well. I think like to give the illusion of the zombies being quicker, so you would feel threatened about it. But like apart from the whip sound effect, I don't like the editing for the zombies in this movie. It's just like very chaotic, and you can't understand like what's happening in battle. So they have like this altercation in a graveyard, and Alice explained her past with Umbrella to Jill, just as the hulking like Nemesis the guy, we're gonna talk about him, appears with orders to target Star's members. So Nemesis is the main villain of the third game. He's like a pursuer. So he's always like pursuing Jill's character on the third game. You can choose like to kill him, try to kill him in every encounter, or just deviate. In the games, his main goal is to eliminate all living stars, which are the survivors of the first game. And in the movie, his main goal is to fight Alice because he is a guy that also survived in the first movie. So they're kind of like testing out to see who is the better experiment, which is kind of like fucked up because Alice, she got like hotter and super strength, and the guy got turned into a monster and he has like to fight with guns. But his introduction is like targeting the stars. And in the movies, the excuse that they use is like, oh yeah, stars are like very good cops, so just make him kill each and every one. So he kills like most of them, but every time he faces Jill, he never faces her actually. But every time like he's about to face Jill, Alice is like, guys, get out. I'm gonna save you all. So we never like see actually any interaction between the Nemesis and Jill. The third game is called Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and it was supposed to be like the name of this movie as well, but they chose Apocalypse because apparently another movie named Nemesis came out before and flopped hard, and they were afraid that people was gonna thought it was the same movie, so they changed it to Apocalypse. The group is like wandering the streets when a scientist whose daughter named Angela was lost in a car crash during the evacuation in the beginning of the movie, calls to offer the group a way out of the city before the city is nuked at sunrise in exchange for the daughter rescue. And they decide, Alice is like, oh yeah, we have to take the deal because they're gonna nuke the city. And they found out the girl is in a school. In the school, two of the people that are in the group, they get killed. In the altercation with Nemesis, Peyton, which is Jill's friend, gets killed. And in the school, Terry gets killed. And when they go to the school, there's like the second scene where Jill's character gets zombified because she's trying to save Angela from the dogs that are zombie dogs, and she releases gas from the stoves in the kitchen of the school, and she tries to lit it up with a match, but the match does not lit up. So in the end, who saves them again? It's Alice, because she comes and she's smoking a cigarette, so she uses the cigarette butt to ignite the room and just burn the dogs, which is like very like why they couldn't give this one to Jill and just make like Alice shows up. But it is a very cool scene. It is a very, very cool scene. And then they found out that like the little girl, Angela, she's infected. And she explains that the T virus was originally created to help her walk again by regenerating her cells. And Alice is the one that points out that she's infected. And the girl's like, oh yeah, you know I'm infected because you are infected too. So they kind of have this thing where they're like, what is happening? And there's also like this subplot of Jill asking Terry to record like Alice exposing what happens in the Hive because they are trying to expose Umbrella if they survive. So after rescuing the girl, the group eventually reaches City Hall where they're going like to take the helicopter to get out of town. And there's like this very cool scene where Alice, she sprints off of a building, like a full building. She climbs to the top of the building. Instead of like shooting people downwards, she chooses to sprint down the wall of the building and then engage in like hand-to-hand combat, which is like so extra, but it's so cool. So cool. When they get there, in the end, she's forced to engage in a hand-to-hand combat with the Nemesis. And Alice like ultimately wins because why not? But she refuses to kill him because she remembers he is the guy from the first movie. Matt, I think is his name. In the middle, like of her refusing, he regains conscious as Nemesis and starts like to shoot the bad guys. They are able to escape in a helicopter just as a missile is destroying the town, but the shockwave causes them to crash, leaving Alice wrecked by the debris of the helicopter. And then we have a cut to 3 weeks later, and we have a scene where Alice is waking up in another umbrella lab, which becomes like a thing. Every movie, there's a secret umbrella lab, which is like brand new. She now has psychic powers, so she kills a bunch of people and she hurts really bad Ser Jorah from Game of Thrones. And she's rescued by Jill and the other survivors pretending to be agents of Umbrella. As they are leaving the perimeter, Ser Jorah activates Program Alice, meaning that he now has control over her via satellites. So let's go back for a moment. Let's get like the bigger picture and going back to the article. The article talks about women who challenges and refuse to fit in this sort of commodity culture. I think it is like very fit to discuss this part because the character of Joe Valentine in the games, she was like one of the first female characters that you could play in a survival horror video game. So that was kind of like a step towards more equity in the game world. So I do see like she being one of the protagonists because in the first game she's one of the protagonists and she's like the sole protagonist of the third game. So I can see how that could be like very groundbreaking. But I watched the movies before and I think having a female lead as the protagonist of an action movie and such like a very expensive action movie, like in the back in the 2000s, it's very groundbreaking and it's very disruptive. And I can see how maybe as a queer kid who could not see himself in those like very strong like male characters, I could see how this type of movie with a female protagonist can really like be a safe haven of some sort. And I think it really like aggravates if we think of this movie in a specific because as I said previously, the characters they are like very blank, so they have like no personality. Alice doesn't have much of a personality besides being like a tough girl, and Jill's character does not even get like a chance to have a personality, which is something that she has in the games. So I think maybe like just seeing this figure of a strong, powerful woman and being like, okay, so maybe I don't identify with the male lead, but I have this other strong figures that it's easier to identify of some sort. They are like more in tune with things that I find beautiful or enjoyable, such as fashion. Also, like the fascination that I think most gay kids get for strong women. They are in the situation where they are fighting for their life and they are like killing a lot of zombies to try to survive. So I feel like maybe we can also feel in that same wavelength of how can I survive like another day? And you see like this power figure and you're like, oh yeah, like this is way cooler than maybe like a macho superhero. Also, we got like another part of the article where he says, I think these qualities are celebrated and admired. I can see with like a queer perspective, maybe that those tough women can be like celebrated and admired. Although I don't think like the intention behind was probably for them to make like badass girls who would be like sexy and stuff. But I think with like our queer superpowers, we turn them into qualities to be celebrated and admired. So this toughness, this strive for survival. The writer also says, especially within communities that are also depicted and treated as outsider, as undesirable and not normative. Alice is literally being experimented and she's starting like to mutate. And technically like she's fighting with every grain of her willpower to remain human and remain not to become a creature. So I think maybe we can identify Jill's character by that mistreat because honestly, even in the games, this is something that it's still happening. Her character is being like very mistreated. She is the protagonist of a lot of games, but I don't think we have like a game with her for the past 10 years, maybe, which is like, why? And Alice, as this literal token of trying to survive and not being normative. So everywhere she goes, she ends up saving the day because she is not normal. But I think from that place of pain comes her superpowers of some sort. So yeah, that's interesting. But in the end, I think a more approachable way to see these characters, I feel like maybe this better explanation on why, as a kid, I think you experience a lot of fear, and especially gay, lesbian, trans, just being not like normative, you experience a lot of fear. It can be like society telling, you're not safe. It can be like you realizing you're not safe because you're different. It can act in a place of like fantasy to feel this kind of hope and just be like, oh, like just as like maybe young boys look to like Superman, who are like very powerful. I would look at Alice. I would look at Jill. Even though she gets like very overshadowed by Alice's character, she's also like a very good cop, she's like a badass in the games. Okay, so this was it. The other version was, I think, much more chaotic, but I think like this one I could get I was able to discuss better like some points that I wanted to bring. This movie I watched a bunch of times as a kid, and I can probably see the whole movie again, but watching as an adult and trying like to understand why I like it kind of broke me because I realized it's not as good, but it's still like it entertained me. So I think this is like a valid as well, like not all movies need to be the greatest piece of art ever made. So yeah. So thank you if you stayed up until the end. Oh, I also have to talk about their clothing. So Jill's, I already spoke about Jill's, right? She wears this beautiful like blue tank top with a mini skirt and boots. And Alice, she wears the cuntiest of all outfits that she wears in like all of the movies. She wears this brownish tank top, but she wears almost like a mesh over it. And she has this pants that she's wearing, but one of the pants is just like a little short and underneath the knee area, like it I don't even know how to describe, but she looks like so good. It has like no functionality, like whatsoever. And where did she find this clothing? Because the city, when she wakes up, the city is already infested by zombies. So it doesn't make like any sense. But again, I think this outfit wise, I'm gonna put like all of the outfits throughout the six movies. Outfit wise is the better outfit because it's like very creative. Of course, her first one is the more iconic, the little red dress, but this one is just like so creative. And yeah, I'm also gonna put like on the screen all of the incarnations of Jill Valentine's because I truly think they got like the looks right. Sienna, she was just able to transform and she looks beautiful, beautiful on this movie. It has like a blue filter over it, and it's just like amazing. It's so beautiful. And so I think this is it. If you stayed up until the end, thank you so much. It was really fun, but also like really stressful making this one because it's one of my favorite movies from childhood. But I also like rewatch every year. And I hope you stay for the next one, which is gonna be Charlize Theron in Ion Flux. And I'm really excited to talk and research like more about this movie because again, it's like a very like powerful figure and she's just like fighting against all odds. So I think it's gonna be like very good. It's a very good movie, I think. So thank you very much and bye bye.